At that point in time, he was my vulcanizer. 35 years of age, he had just a primary school education, and at the same time, he had 2 houses, 3 taxi cabs, and me? I had no house of my own, and I was actually struggling with bills. It wasn't adding up. I mean, things weren't adding up. Why would someone that I would ordinarily consider lower on the social ladder than I am, because he was not educated and I was educated, why was he doing better than I was doing at that point in time, despite the fact that I had what could be referred to as a decent salary? Then I asked him the question one day, guy, how are you doing this? And he told me how. But before I do that, before I tell you what he told me, please help me grow this channel by subscribing and hit that bell button now, so that every time I come up with a new content like this, you are able to get notification. All right, let's do this. Thank you. So I asked my vulcanizer friend what he was doing differently that I was not doing well, or what he was getting right that I probably was getting wrong. And what he told me was a shocker. He said, the only reason you are struggling is because of your salary. How? He said, you are broke basically because you are a salary earner. And I was trying to, understand what that meant. And now he told me that, you see, salary is meant to be a step up for you, but it's becoming a setup. Okay, let me admit, those were not his exact words. That's my own coinage. That what ordinarily should have been something I would use to step up was becoming like a setup for me. And I asked him what he meant by all of this, because, well, I think he was trying to make some sense to me at this point in time. The results he was getting in his life were better than the ones I was getting in my life. Even though he would always call me my oga, but I knew who the oga was between the two of us. So when I asked him why salary that was meant to be a step up for me was becoming a setup, he told me this, that the irregularity of the paycheck was what made it a setup for me. Because unlike him, he had no idea, when the next pay would come. If he was rendering a service at this point in time, that is all he has at that point in time. He has no idea when the next one will come. And so he has a different interaction with money than I did with my salary. But you know what? As a salary earner, there is always this consciousness that, okay, it's just to struggle for the next 30 days. Another one would come. And that clear difference in thinking is the fundamental reason most salary earners are broke, like a joke, as Myron Golden would say, while those who are not earning salary, the artisans, the ones you think are down there, they're actually making exploits. So I told him to explain how he manages his money, and he actually literally taught me money lessons that I would rather not have expected from someone like him. He said, so when I make any amount of money from services rendered to people like you my customers, you my ogas, as he was calling me, even though I keep saying that was just him trying to be humble. He was a real oga at that point in time. He said, so when I make any amount of money from you, what I do is I break it down, or I split it into percentages. The first thing I take care of is feeding at home, because I don't want my family to go hungry. So it will buy food for the house with a portion of that amount of money that he has collected, from every service rendered. And he will set aside an amount of money for his transportation. He has these small piggy banks for some things. This one, my transportation, this one, and that, and that, and that. Okay, so after feeding, then he will set aside something for transportation, and the rest would go into what he called a CTCS account. For those of us who are in Nigeria, we understand what this one means. It means the Cooperative Thrift and Credit Society, which is some kind of joint savings account that after a while, if you're consistent with what you're doing and they know you there, you can have access to loan. Okay, and once it does that, then the next thing follows. The way the CTCS works in Nigeria is once you continue saving money with the organization for a period of time, after a while, you can have access to 100% of the savings that you have there. So what he was doing, he would save for like 12 months or thereabouts, and after a while, he would ask for loan. They will give him the loan. And you know what he would do? He bought his first taxi with the first loan, and that was yielding money. with interest. After a while, he would pay back the money consistently and he would have access to a higher amount of money as loan. That was how he was able to buy 3 taxi cabs, build a house for himself, and eventually he was able to buy a personal car, which is actually below what he could afford for real for himself. And he was living a comfortable life, or let me say a relatively comfortable life, when people like me that were salary earners were actually struggling. Yet we were taking our big cars to him to service for us because we thought we were the big boys. But then at the end of the day, we knew who the big boys were and who the small boys were. There were 3 fundamental differences between my vulcanizer friend and I at that particular point in time. Number 1, he was spending on needs. He wasn't spending on wants. Somebody said a long time ago that the first 100K in Nigeria makes, he buys a mobile phone. The next 1 million, he buys a car. This is true of salary earners. We always want to live up to the Joneses. We always feel like, okay, we are entitled to this particular class of life. We are entitled to this particular style of living, basically because we work in a big office, forgetting that working in a big office does not make you a big person automatically. You are just a fraction, a very tiny fraction of that particular company, especially if the company is neither yours nor your dad's. Okay, so he was spending on needs, I was spending on wants. That was the first fundamental difference between the two of us. 2, he was buying assets, I was acquiring liabilities. What do I mean? This guy would save money up to 12 months. He will pull out loan from the CTCS and he will buy a taxi cab, give to someone on hire purchase or something. The person will return the money after a while. He bought the first taxi, he bought the second taxi, he bought the third taxi. I never thought about doing such. It would never occur to me because, taxi, as far as I was concerned, that was way below my status. But then I became wiser. So he was buying assets. I was buying liabilities. At some point, I had 3 cars at a stretch in my garage, and I was even thinking of giving one to someone. Call me foolish, call me stupid. Maybe I was then, but then I became wiser after a while. That was the second thing he did right that I actually did wrong. And the third one, which I mentioned earlier, is that he handled money with more respect than I did because he had no idea when the next one would come. So when he had any amount of money, whether 1,000 naira or more than that, he would treat it with more respect than I was doing. He would split it and do stuff carefully, but I was not careful. So I learned 2 lessons from this encounter with my vulcanizer. Do I call it vendor now, or what do I call it? The 2 lessons I learned from my vulcanizer friend. Number 1, never underestimate the genius of a man because of the weakness of grammar. This is a guy who could hardly, make 3 meaningful sentences in English language without making any mistake. And here am I, fire-spitting English language speaker, as I like to see myself, but it was making a headway where I was actually almost stuck and struggling with bills. So the fact that somebody cannot speak clear English language sentences does not stop him from being financially sound. You just have to understand what they're doing, because money making or financial success is not a respecter of your ability to speak English language or otherwise. English is just a language. It does not translate to intelligence. That is number 1. Then number 2, success always leaves clues. Your job as a struggler is to find the clues and replicate the patterns that led some people to success, because after a while I was understudying my vulcanizer friend and I was able to replicate some of what he has done. I didn't imbibe his ideas hook, line and sinker. I just focused on some things and I readjusted, and it made all the difference in my life. And so those are money management lessons taught me by my uneducated vulcanizer friend. If you enjoyed this particular episode, please help me grow this channel. I want to hit a higher number of subscribers. Help me subscribe to the channel, like the video and share it to your peers or amongst your contacts. And every time I come up with a content like this, you'll be notified by YouTube, because it will bring that notification. My name is Ayo Jimmy. I'll see you in next content. Thank you.